Captain Underpants and the Preposterous Plight of the Purple Potty People, the 8th epic novel by Dav Pilkey. Let's go right into it. Hi everybody, as you can see, we've been experiencing some technical difficulty. This comic book should get you up to date on our stories so far. The often told untold story of Captain Underpants by George and Haro Tutchin. And if you want to skip to chapter 1 immediately, you can just do it too. Once upon a time, there was 2 cool kids named George and Harold. You're hip to the jive. Me too. But they had an old, mean principal named Mr. Crab who was mean. I'm all mad and stuff. So George and Harold hypnotized him with a 3D hypno ring. You obey our every command. Okay. Then they accidentally made him think he was a superhero. You're Captain Underpants. Okay. Look at me, I'm Captain Underpants. Ha 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 ha. But he escaped and ran off to fight crime. Ras, tra-la-la. George and Harold ran after him. Hey, come back here. No way. Then one day he drank some superpower juice. Glug glug glug. Now he has superpowers and stuff. Look at me, got superpowers and stuff. Aw man. But if you think that's bad, it gets worse. Pay attention because this next part is important. The worst part is that whenever Mr. Krabs hears somebody snap their fingers, snap, he turns into Captain Underpants. Tra-la-la. And whenever somebody splashes water on Captain Underpants' face, he turns back into mean old Mr. Crab. Blah blah blah. In their last adventure, George and Harold got 2 new pets. A bionic hamster named Sulu, cool. The pterodactyl named Crackers, awesome. Everything was cool until this brainiac named Melvin showed up. I'm telling, Melvin made a time machine out of a purple potty. It looked like this. Anyway, George and Harold wanted to use the time machine, but Melvin had one rule. Don't use the time machine 2 days in a row. Okay. If you use it 2 days in a row, something very bad will happen. Okay. I mean it, don't use it 2 days in a row. Okay. Seriously, don't use it 2 days in a row. Okay. Then, hey, let's use this thing 2 days in a row. Okay. And so, George, Harold, Crackers, and Sulu used the time machine 2 days in a row, and something very bad happened. What will happen next? Chapter 1, George and Harold. This is George, Spirit, and Harold Tutchins. George is the skeleton on the right with the tie and the flat top. Harold is the one on the left with the t-shirt and the bad haircut. Remember that now. As you might remember from our last adventure, George and Harold have recently made the horrifying mistake of trying to pass through a synthetic time warp without letting the C2X906 Super Benfilminatrix drive after Beboflux capacitating sausage fire cool down, thus creating a sub-paradoxical, dimensionalistic, alternate shift which opened up a hyper-googlophonic screen door into a sub-omnivating ultra-zenticular biozanzonophanamarzipan. To put it in scientific terms, they screwed up. But don't get all freaked out because everybody looked like a skeleton. X-ray beams are a normal byproduct of interdimensional reality shifting. Don't worry, they'll probably clear up by the time you turn the page. See, what did I tell you? George, Harold, and their loyal pets suddenly found themselves wishing that they had never set foot inside the terrifying purple potty that was about to send them all on a journey into a horrifying abyss of the unknown, a journey that would probably spell impending doom for themselves and would most likely bring about the end of our civilization as we know it. But before I can tell you that story, I have to tell you this story. Chapter 2, Those Wacky Grown-Ups. It's been said that adults spend the first 2 years of their children's lives trying to make them walk and talk, and the next 16 years trying to get them to sit down and shut up. It's the same way with potty training. Most adults spend the first few years of a child's life cheerfully discussing pee and poopies and how important it is to learn to put their pee-pee and poo-poo in the potty like big people do. But once children have mastered the art of toiletry, they're immediately forbidden to ever talk about poo-pee, toilets, and other bathroom-related subjects again. Such things are suddenly considered rude and vulgar, and are no longer rewarded with praise and cookies and juice boxes. One day you're a superstar because you pooped in the toilet like a big boy, and the next day you're sitting in the principal's office because you said the word poopy in American history class, which, if you ask me, is the perfect place to say that word. You're probably wondering, why would adults do that? Why would they encourage something one day and discourage it the next? The only answer I can think of is that adults are totally bonkers and should probably be avoided at all times. Perhaps you'll be lucky and find a small handful of grown-ups whom you can trust, but I'm sure we can all agree that you really have to keep an eye on most adults, most of the time. Which is just what George and Harold did. Chapter 3, The School of Hard Knocks. Unfortunately, the adults at George and Harold's school were anything but trustworthy. Take their principal, Mr. Krabs, for example. Mr. Krabs' wicked heart thrived on the teardrops of children. His very soul danced at the thought of crushing a child's spirit and dashing his or her hopes and dreams against the jagged rocks of never-ending despair. Each day, Mr. Krabs would stand at the doorway to his office, gleefully landing our detention slips to any child who was unfortunate enough to cross this putrid path, and for very minor infractions too, such as smiling, breathing without permission, or smelling funny. As bad as Mr. Krabs was, most of the teachers in George and Harold's school were even worse. Fortunately for George and Harold, their evil educators were not very intelligent. They could be outsmarted easily, and they often were. Now you might think that it wasn't very sporting of George and Harold to try and outsmart dumb people, and perhaps you'd be right. But George and Harold were just trying to make the best of a bad situation. But unfortunately for George and Harold, their bad situation was about to get much, much worse. Chapter 4, Purple Potty Vote. After several intense minutes of orange flashing lights, X-ray beams, and lightning-infused electric whirlwinds, the purple potty finally stopped shaking and sputtering and came to sudden halt. Thick yellow smoke poured from its glowing hot tailpipes as the grinding gears and coughing motor shifted into powered down mode. George and Harold had no idea what to expect. They were supposed to be perched high in a prehistoric tree 65 million years ago in the Cretaceous period of the Mesozoic era. But as they stepped out the plastic door of the purple potty, the boys were disheartened to find themselves in the middle of the school library, right where they had started. "What are we doing here?" asked Harold. "I don't know," said George. "Something must have gone wrong." Harold carefully tucked Crackers back into his book bag, and the two boys looked around the brightly lit library. "Well, hello, boys," said the school librarian. "This is Banned Books Week. Would you like to expand your minds today?" No thanks," said George. "Hey," said Harold, "didn't you get fired in our last book?" "I don't think so," said the librarian. Said George. "Not feeling very good about this." Not feeling good, asked Melvin neatly, who had been struggling to comprehend the easy-to-read children's bestseller Frankenfart's U.S. the Bionic Barf Bunnies from Diarrhea Land. "Maybe you should go to see the school nurse." "We have a school nurse?" asked George. "So we just had a box of Band-Aids and a rusty sauce," said Harold. Of course we have a school nurse," said Melvin. "His office is right next to our 5-star gourmet cafeteria." George and Harold looked confused. Thanks," said George, "but we'll be okay." Chapter 5, Strangers in Paradise Lost. As George and Harold walked down the hallway after school, they noticed that something seemed wrong, very wrong, but they couldn't figure out what it was. I can see imagination is more important than knowledge. Albert Einstein. Right. Miss Andrew, the unbelievably crabby school secretary, passed the boys and smiled kindly. Why, hello, George and Harold, she said. So good to see you two. Have a wonderful day. George and Harold looked at her suspiciously. What just happened? Asked Harold. I don't know, said George, but something strange sure is going on. George and Harold opened their locker and carefully put crackers and Sulu inside. Shh, they're asleep, said George. Good, said Harold. They can take a nap while we get to class. On the way to their homeroom, George and Harold stopped to switch the letters around on the lunch menu side. Today's menu is soy burgers, hot lime pie, apple juice. Now they're changing it to something else. But just as they were finishing, the principal, Mr. Crump, caught them red-handed. Hey, Buzz, he said, what are you kids doing out here? And they changed it to, please eat my plump, juicy boogers. George stammered. Yes, see, we were, please eat my plump, juicy boogers, said Mr. Crump, giggling with glee. That's gotta be the funniest thing I've seen all day. Both really cracked me up. You're hilarious. Then, with a spring and a step, Mr. Crump pranced away, whistling a merry tune. What just happened? Asked Harold. Shh, whispered George. Look. George pointed at two kids who were coming toward them, reading a homemade comic book. The kid on the left had a t-shirt and a flat top. The one on the right had a tie and a bad haircut. Please feel free to remember that now if you wish. It's us, whispered George. How can they be us? Whispered Harold. I thought we were us. George and Harold hid behind a trash can after two look-alikes walked toward them. They stopped in front of the lunch menu sign and frowned. Then a devilish look came over their faces as they quickly began rearranging the letters. The strange boys snickered wickedly as they sneaked away from their prank. What just happened? Asked Harold. I think I figured it out, said George. Chapter 6. The Road According to George. I think the purple potty brought us to some kind of strange backwards universe, said George. No way, said Harold. That kind of thing only happens in poorly written children's stories whose authors have clearly begun running out of ideas. Sure, I'll prove it, said George. The two friends walked to the cafeteria and took a whiff. That's yours, said Harold. It doesn't smell like dirty diapers, greasy dishwaters, and moldy tennis shoes in here anymore. It smells like food. Yep, said George. Next, the boys went to the gymnasium. That's yours, said Harold. The gym teacher isn't fat anymore, and he's not being incredibly crude to the non-athletic kids like he usually is. Yep, said George. Finally, George and Harold stepped outside. That's yours, said Harold. All of our evils and most terrifying enemies from the past have been miraculously transformed into good guys. Yep, said George. Now the police are the bad guys. Chapter 7. Getting out of town. George and Harold ran back to their locker. Let's grab crackers and Sulu and get out of this crazy place, said George. Good idea, said Harold. But when they opened the locker door, their two friends were missing. Where the heck are crackers and Sulu? Cried George. I don't know, said Harold. Nobody else has the combination to our locker. Nobody else except our twins, gasped George. Harold tried to shut their locker, but the door jammed on something. What's that? Asked George. It's like a comic book, said Harold. He held it up and read the front cover out loud. At that moment, George and Harold began to get a dreadful sense of the horror they were up against. Chapter 8. The Preposterous Plight of Captain Blunderpants. Story by Harold Hutchins. Artwork by George Beard. The Preposterous Plight of Captain Underpants by Harold Hutchins and George Beard. Once upon a time, there lived two evil children named George and Harold. And bad as well. They had a very nice principal who went by the name of Mr. Crump. Little boys, have a pleasant day. Whatever. One day, George and Harold hypnotized Mr. Crump. You will obey us. Yes, master. They made him think he was an evil villain. You're now Captain Blunderpants. All right. George and Harold made Captain Blunderpants do all sorts of evil things. Steal us a video game system. Okay. And Captain Underpants obeyed. Crash. Steal us a big screen television. Crash. I'm so happy I could cry. Me too. Uh-oh. Crash. Soon George and Harold had the world's coolest treehouse. Do you boys need anything else? Yeah, how about a pizza? Sure thing, masters. Sure thing, masters. And so, crash. Hold it right there, Captain Blunderpants. You've stolen TVs, duck quizzes, pop machines, massage chairs, and disco balls. But this time you've gone too far. You're under arrest for a grand theft pizza. You forgot to catch me first, and the chase was on. And Captain Blunderpants was chased onto the freeway. When suddenly, oh no, hey, look out, screech. Crash, yeah! The strange mixture of chocolate, peanut butter, and extra cheese combined to create a super powerful chemical reaction. Sizzle, sizzle, which gave Captain Underpants amazing superpowers. I feel super. La la tra! Then, here's your pizza, boys. Hey, where's the pineapple? Fruit. Crash. Wow, just think of all the evil things we could do now. As Captain Blunderpants as our evil superpower slaves, we'll be able to get away with anything. Soon, the entire world will be ours. Mwah ha 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 ha. Oh, by the way, whenever Captain Blunderpants or someone snaps his fingers, turns back into Mr. Crab. Have a swell boy. And whenever Mr. Crab gets water on his head, he turns back into Captain Blunderpants. Remember that now. Evil Treehouse Comic, LLC. Chapter 9. Now without my hamster and my pterodactyl, I think our evil twins made this comic book, said Harold. They must have, said George. The artwork is really bad, and I'm pretty sure they misspelled some words. Let's get out of here, said Harold. Not without crackers and Sulu, said George. George and Harold ran to a window and looked out. There they saw their two evil twins sneaking home, carrying their beloved pets with them. Sulu and Crackers have no idea what's going on, said George. They think those two guys are US. How in the world are we going to stop US? Asked Harold. Chapter 10. Him no, Harold. George and Harold knew exactly where those evil twins had taken Crackers and Sulu. The same place they would have taken them, their treehouse. So our 2-year-olds dashed home as fast as they could. Then they climbed up the treehouse ladder as quietly as they could. But when they peeked inside, they saw something that was 389 times worse than they could ever have imagined. The evil twins were hypnotizing their beloved pets with a 3D hypno ring. You obey our every command, said evil Harold. Yeah, said evil George, and you'll be really wicked from now on too. George and Harold gasped, which is actually not a very smart thing to do if you're trying to go unnoticed. Hey look, shouted evil Harold. Gaspers! Get him! Shouted evil George to their newly hypnotized pets. Crackers didn't move. The dazed pterodactyl shook his head and looked a little confused, but Sulu immediately sprung into action. Linda, George, and Harold grabbed him by the shirts and yanked him to the ground. Hey, said evil George, those kids look just like us. What should we do with them? Can't take any chances, said evil Harold. Then he called to Sulu in a loud and commanding voice. Destroy them, O wicked hamster. Chapter 11. Crackers to the rescue. Crackers did not understand what was going on, but the plucky pterodactyl knew that something needed to be done, and quickly. So with a sudden whoosh of flapping wings, Crackers swooped in and grabbed George and Harold from the relentless little paws of their raging robotic rodent rival. Oh no, screamed Harold. Crackers is going to fly us high into the air and drop us. We're doomed. Actually, I think he's trying to rescue us, said George. But he got hypnotized just like Sulu, said Harold. Why on earth would he do the opposite of what he was ordered to do? And how come all of our pronouns are getting italicized, said George. Let's not worry about that now, said Harold. We've got to get out of here. We can't leave Sulu behind, cried George. Don't worry, said Harold. They'll come back for Sulu. So the three friends flew to the school and headed upstairs to the library. "Hey, that looks like a pterodactyl," said Mr. Crab as their heroes pushed past them. Let me pet him, Mr. Crab cried, chasing after them. Crash! George, Harold, and Crackers finally reached the library just in time to see Sulu and her evil twins smash through the ceiling with a terrible crash. "The jerks won't get away from us this time," said evil Harold. Desperately, George, Harold, and Crackers tumbled into the purple potty, slammed the door shut, and quickly reset the controls. Mr. Crab and Sulu pounded on the door of the purple potty, while George and Harold's evil twins shook the malfunctioning time machine from side to side. All at once, an orange light started flashing wildly. The purple potty began to shake and wobble violently. Then the entire room lit up with an explosive burst of lightning as the purple potty and everyone around it disappeared into a whirlwind of electric air. Chapter 12. Kablasky! Suddenly, there was another blinding flash of light. Everyone around the purple potty flew off in different directions. Then the purple potty stopped shaking and wobbling and switched into shutdown mode. George, Harold, and Crackers peeked out. "Look," said Harold, "there aren't any books in this library. We must be back in our own reality." "But we've got to be sure," said George. The two boys tucked Crackers into Harold's book bag and crept out into the hallway. As they peered into the windows of nearby classrooms, they saw room after room of heartbroken and despondent-looking children. Some were standing in corners, weeping. Others were sitting on desk stools, wearing humiliating hats, while still others were writing unbelievably degrading sentences over and over on a chalkboard as their teachers rifled through their lunchbox and stealing all of the best desserts. "Yep," said George, "we're back in our own reality." I never thought I'd say this," said Harold, "but it's good to be home. To the treehouse," cried George. Chapter 13. Purple Potty People Unite. Seconds after George, Harold, and Crackers left alone. Chapter 13. Purple Potty People Unite. Seconds after George, Harold, and Crackers left the library, four confused beings from an alternate dimension began to stir. Evil George, evil Harold, evil Sulu, and Mr. Crab stumbled to the center of the strange, empty library, rubbing their heads and looking around curiously. "Look," said evil George, "this library has no books on the shelves." Said evil Harold, "It looks like we've entered some kind of alternate universe, an illogical reality where everything is backwards." "Backwards, eh?" said evil George. "We could do quite well in a place like this." He walked over to the drinking fountain, splashed some water on nice Mr. Crab's face. Suddenly, nice Mr. Crab's confused smile turned into an evil frown. He ripped off his clothes and tied a curtain from a nearby window around his neck. Then evil George handed him a bag to pee, and the pernicious principal stepped before them, snarling angrily through his flared nostrils. "I am Captain Blunderpants," he shouted in a thunderous voice. Chapter 14. The chapter where some stuff happens. Meanwhile, back at the treehouse, George and Harold grabbed the supplies before heading off to save Sulu. "You'll need our 3D hypno ring," said George, "to change Sulu back to his old self again." "Cool," said Harold. "We better take the rest of this extra strength superpower juice just in case." "Good idea," said George. The two friends stuffed their supplies and their pterodactyl into their book bags and headed down the treehouse ladder. "Just where the heck do you two think you're going?" asked the commanding force at the top of the ladder. It was Brutus' dad, and he didn't seem very happy. Miss George, we need to go back to school for something." "Yeah," said Harold, "we forgot something." "Well, it'll have to wait until tomorrow," said George's dad. "We're having dinner with the Hutchinsons tonight, remember?" "Oh yeah," said George. "It's grandparents' day. He almost forgot." "Well, we're just in time for dinner," said George's dad. "Go inside and wash up." But the fate of the entire planet, the entire world is in our hands, cried Harold. The fate of the entire world can wait until tomorrow, said George's dad. Chapter 15, Super Supper. After they washed their hands, the two boys went to the dining room. George's parents had prepared a big meal, and everybody waited patiently for George and Harold to join them. Harold's mom, sister, and grandpa were there, along with George's mom, dad, and his great-grandma. "Hello, babies," said George's great-grandma. "What have you boys been up to today?" "Nothing," said George as he hugged his great-grandma. "We made you and Grandpa a comic book yesterday," said Harold. "Did?" said Harold's grandpa. "No, let's have a look." George shuffled through his book bag, taking things out and laying them on the table. "It's here somewhere," he said. Finally, he pulled out 2 copies of their latest comic book, The Adventures of Boxer Boy and Great Granny Grido. "It's about how you guys turned into superheroes and saved the road and stuff," said George. "I drew the pictures," said Harold. "Well, that's very nice, boys," said George's dad. "Now sit down and let's eat." "We can't," said George. "We got to go now. It's really important." George and Harold's grandparents poured themselves a glass of juice and began reading their new comic books, while the boys continued arguing with George's dad. Chapter 16, The Adventures of Boxer Boy and Great Granny Grido. An epic novella by George Bridge and Howard Hutchins. The Adventures of Boxer Boy and Great Granny Grido. George Bridge and Howard Hutchins. Everybody knows that grandparents are kind of dorky. They tell dumb jokes. Why did the silly Wooly throw his clock in the air? He wanted to see time fly. Ha ha. They call you embarrassing nicknames in public. "Hello, babies." Ha ha. And they have no scene of what things cost. "Here's a nickel. Why don't you buy a video game with them?" "Thanks, I will." But grandparents are still cool for one reason. We're old, and we don't care what anyone thinks. "Out of my way, Buster Brown. Step aside, you bother me. Our heroes." And so, everything was cool until one day, when a strange new store opened up downtown. Robo-geezers INC. They were selling robots. "Hey kids, trade in your old, worn-out grandparents for the latest in Robo-geezer technology. Cool, they're tons better than regular grandparents. They tell funny jokes. What's 40 feet long and smells like pee? Lying dancers act the old folks so. Haha. They call you cool nicknames in public. Hey Thor, yo, what's up, dog? And best of all, they have no sense of what things cost. Here's $10,000 for a candy bar." Soon, every kid in town was trading in their old grandparents. "Hey, what's going on?" "Nothing." "Where are you taking us?" "Nowhere. We're brand new Robo-grannies and Grandpatron 2000. "Wow, cool. I love my new Robo-geezers." Soon, there was only 2 real grandparents left in town. "You wouldn't trade us in, would you?" "No way. You better not or you'll get a whipping." Anyway, one day, George and Harold's grandparents went downtown. Something fishy is going in there. So they snuck inside the building. Soon, hey look, slave room. They opened the door and saw a tragic discovery. Hey, all of the grandparents in town got turned into slaves. Oh my. We got to save those old fools. But how? Beats me. Hey look, a whole box of hard candies. Don't forget the slaves for now and just eat candy. What slave? Munch munch. Meanwhile, in the next room, in a few more days, those old slaves will be under our control. Cool. Then I'll give the superpowers. How will you do that? Easy. Got a whole box of superpowered hard candies in the other room. Well, people love hard candies. I know. Later. Those candies were good. I feel so strong. Me too. I feel powerful. But no, those guys ate all my superpower hard candies. George and Horace's grandparents joined hands. Either powers activate. They spin around and around. Then they were transformed. And Boxer Boy and Great Granny Grido. I'm out of here. I'm with you. The bad guys ran upstairs. They got into a UFO on top of their buildings and took off, calling all Robo-geezers, attack Boxer Boy and Great Granny Gerdo. Suddenly, all the Robo-geezers in town transformed. Click, click, and off they flew. The Robo-geezers attacked. Boxer Boy and Great Granny Gerdo were faster than a speeding electric scooter. Zoom. More powerful than a dose outburst. Bonk. And able to leap tall buildings without breaking a hip. Whee! But there's too many of them. Have an idea. Let them chase you for a while. So the robots all chased Great Granny Gerdo, and Boxer Boy attacked the spaceship. Hey! Punch, bam, bam, crash! Kick! Then he got some paint. Hey! And added the finishing touch. Hard candy. Hey, Robo-dorks, look! What? Hey, yummy! The Robo-geezers tried to devour the spaceship into a wild feeding frenzy. They ate and ate and ate and ate much. Then one of them bit on the fuel line. Kaboom! We're free! Hooray for Boxer Boy! And 3 cheers for Great Granny Gerdo. Chapter 17. Meanwhile, back at the treehouse, while George and Harrow pleaded with George's dad to be excused from dinner, a pack of evil things was just outside their window, sneaking up into their treehouse. We've got to create some kind of diversion while we unleash our sinful schemes, said Evil Harrow. The villains looked around the treehouse for anything they could use. What's the thing, said Evil George. Press the button on the back of the miniature Goosey Grow 4000. Suddenly, a beam of energy shot out of the tiny contraption, accidentally zapping Evil Sulu, who was tucked inside Evil Harrow's shirt pocket. Immediately, Evil Sulu began to grow bigger and bigger until he leaped out of Evil Harrow's pocket and fell to the floor with a giant thud. Evil Sulu was now the size of a full-grown sheepdog. The villains all smiled at one another as they watched Evil Sulu growl and snarl ferociously. I think we found our diversion, said Evil George as he zapped Evil Sulu again. Chapter 18. Crash! Suddenly, Evil Sulu grew to the size of a giant monster. He jumped out of the treehouse and landed in George's backyard with a terrible, thunderous crash. What was that? Cried George's dad. Everyone jumped up and dashed outside to get a better look at the horrible creature that tore over the house, snarling and roaring hideously. For some strange reason, the Harvard's grandparents jumped up and dashed the fastest, faster than they moved in years, but nobody really noticed because of the giant hamster thing. What's going on? Cried Harrow. Those evil guys must have followed us back to our own reality somehow, whispered George. We've got to stop them before they take over our road. Sulu crashed and smashed his way through the neighborhood, heading toward the big city, because, well, that's where giant monsters usually head. George ran inside and grabbed the 3D hypno ring and the superpower juice, which felt surprisingly empty, and whistled for crackers. And while the grown-ups were fussing and fretting over trivial things like broken fences, insurance policies, and properly damaged reports, George, Harvard, and Crackers flew off to save the road. Chapter 19. When Hamsters Attack.com. Soon the 3 friends soared over the center of the city. There they met up with their beloved pet Sulu, was now a giant evil monster destroying everything in its path. Well, said Harvard, it looks like you and I are going to have to drink the superpower juice so we can stop giant evil Sulu from wrecking the city. Harold, said George, as he eyed the carton of superpower juice suspiciously. I'm so physicked, said Harold. I've always wanted to have superpowers. Huh? Harold? Said George again. He held the carton to his ear and shook it back and forth. I hope I get Kung Fu grip and X-ray vision, said Harold. That would be awesome. Harold, shouted George as he turned the superpower juice carton upside down. There's nothing left. What do you mean? Cried Harold. There was like a third of carton in there 20 minutes ago. Well, it's gone now, said George. It must have evaporated or something. The boys watched helplessly as giant evil Sulu continued trashing the city. Well, said George, I guess there's just one thing left to do. Hurriedly, the three friends flew to the house of the principal, Mr. Crumb. It was easy to find since it was the only house on Curmudgeon Boulevard that was covered in toilet paper. Next time scholars use single-play toilet paper, said George, we'll get better coverage. After a quick knock on the door and an even quicker snap of their fingers, the crowd transformed into the amazing Captain Underpants. And in no time at all, the world's greatest spotted superhero was face to face with the world's biggest, baddest bionic hamster. Chapter 20, the incredibly graphic violence chapter, part 1 in Flip-o-rama. So first the hamster a rock. Now he's trying to attack Captain Underpants. Put your head on my boulder. Now Captain Underpants is now getting revenge. Alright, it's finished already. Chapter 21, the anticlimactic chapter. The battle between man and beast was over. George and Haro petted Sulu's giant face and breathed a sigh of relief. You'll be okay, said George. Just got knocked out. Great, said Haro. It looks like all of our problems are over. Not so fast, said a voice that came from somewhere on the lower right-hand corner of the next page. It was Evil George, along with Evil Haro and the ultra-evil Captain Blunderpants. The terrible trio had been busy working on their preposterous plight, which is just a fancy way of saying that they were busy robbing a bank. Some days been messing with our giant attack hamsters, said Evil Haro. I think we need to teach those goody-goodies a lesson. And I'm just the guy to do it, said Captain Underpants proudly. Instantly, the mood shifted. Everyone stood back. The air crackled with tension. The showdown of the century was about to begin. Captain Underpants was soon engaged in a historic battle with his evil twin. Never before had our brave hero encountered an enemy who was so powerful. Proud for proud, superpower for superpower. Captain Underpants was pitted against his equal. He had met his match. It was to be the ultimate smackdown, an all-out war, the brawl to end all brawls, the definitive clash between good and evil, a momentous confrontation of the most critical. Snap! Drew snapped his fingers, and suddenly the horrifyingly evil Captain Blunderpants transformed into a friendly elementary school principal. "Oh man!" cried Evil George and Evil Haro. "You read your comic book back in chapter 8, said Haro. Did you think we wouldn't remember how to turn your evil super villain back into a harmless principal?" George and Haro quickly found some rope and tied up Evil George, Evil Haro, and nice Mr. Crumb. "We're taking you losers back to your own reality where you won't bother us ever again," said George. "All we have to do is dehypnotize and shrink Sulu, and our job will be done," said Haro. "Nothing can possibly go wrong now." "No, you really shouldn't say things like that," said George. "Why?" said Haro. Chapter 22, Kaboom! Suddenly, lightning flashed, thunder crashed, and the rain came tumbling down. "That's why," said George. As the first few drops of rain hit Captain Underpants' putty face, he began to transform. In a matter of seconds, he changed from a confident, powerful superhero into an angry, annoyed elementary school principal. Likewise, the rain on the face thing was having the opposite effect on nice Mr. Crumb, transforming him once again into an arrogant, full-tempered supervillain named Captain Blunderpants. Evil George and Evil Harold smiled their evil smiles as Captain Blunderpants snapped their ropes and yelled out a triumphant "La la tra!" George and Harold quickly snapped their fingers again and again, but it was having no effect. It was raining too hard, and Mr. Crook was getting annoyed. "This is the dumbest dream I've ever had," he shouted. "I'm gonna go home and get back into bed." And with that, he turned and stormed off toward the soggy toilet paper covered house. "Looks like the tables have turned," Evil Harold snickered. "Guys haven't won yet," said George. Quickly, George and Harold leaped onto Cracker's back, and the three forlorn friends flew off toward their treehouse. "Don't just stand there," cried Evil Harold to his creepy cohorts. "Let's get him!" Chapter 23. 2 minutes later. Back in George's yard, our heroes searched furiously through their treehouse. "I found it," cried George. "The Shrinky Pig 2000. All we have to do is shrink those evil losers and you save the road." "Too late," shouted Captain Blunderpants as he grabbed George and Harold by their shirt collars. "You take that Shrinky thingy," said Evil Harold as the contraption slipped out of George's arms. "I'm not sure how it works, but once I figure it out, I can think of about 1,000,009 evil things to do with it." Captain Blunderpants held George and Harold high in the air and snarled viciously. "Prepare to be pulverized," he shouted. "You're doomed," screamed Harold. "Now wait just a cotton-picking minute, young fella," shouted the familiar-sounding voice from inside George's house. Chapter 24. Nobody messes with our grandbabies. Harold's grandpa and George's great-grandma stepped out onto the back-page show and confronted the big bully, Captain Blunderpants. "You put those babies down or you'll get the whooping of your lifetime," said George's great-grandma. Captain Blunderpants laughed haughtily. "We're not going to warn you again, Skippy," said Harold's grandpa. Captain Blunderpants continued to tighten his grip on George and Harold. So the two octogenarians joined hands, gazed fiercely into each other's eyes, and shouted, "Ether powers activate!" Quickly, they began spinning around and around. Faster and faster, the old folks twirled until a tornado formed around them, tearing away their clothes and jewelry, and sending patio furniture flying violently. Suddenly, the twirling stopped. The tornado subsided, and the elderly twosome stood proudly in their underwear, huffing, puffing, and fearlessly facing their foe. "Ooh, that was fun. Let's do it again." "Henry," said George's great-grandma. "Heh," laughed Harold's grandpa. "Alright, my dear, but we've got to teach that fat boy a lesson first." "Oh yeah," said George's great-grandma. "The young fella's got a hankering for us spankering." Harold's grandpa grabbed a couple of curtains from the kitchen window and tied them around their necks. "Not too tight, Henry," said George's great-grandma. With their case in place, George and Harold, super grandparents, approached Captain Blunderpants triumphantly. "Alright, Sonny," said Harold's grandpa. "Prepare to get your bucket whooped by Boxer Boy and Great Granny Gerdo." Chapter 25, the incredibly graphic violent chapter part 2 in Flip-o-rama TM. The Geriatric Jawbreaker. Captain Blunderpants. A cane in the brain. Alright. Captain Blunderpants got their brain. Take a walk around the wild side. Great Grandma Gerdo headed Captain Blunderpants. Mr. Rocker, I guess. Chapter 26. Shrinky Dorks. And no, said George, "I think I just figured out what happened to the superpowered juice that disappeared earlier." "Oh yeah," said Evil George, "but you didn't figure this out. All we have to do is press one button on the shrinking machine and you'll be all transformed into tiny little shrimps." "Go ahead and press the button," laughed Harold. You're holding it backwards anyway. You just shrink yourself. Really, said Evil Harold. Gee, thanks. He turned the shrinking pig 2000 around and pressed the button. Zap! And they were shrunk to the size of potato chips. Hey, shouted Mini Evil George. What happened? Oops, said Harold. I guess I made a mistake. You actually were holding it right the first time. My bad. No, said George. I think I know 2 little boys who could really use a good spanking. Chapter 27, The Incredibly Graphic Violent Chapter, Part 3, and Flip-o-rama TM. Whoa, folks, you know what to do, and you know how to do it. Happy Thanksgiving. Alright. Now they're getting revenge. Chapter 28, Wrapping Things Up. Well, it looks like our job here is done, said Boxer Boy. Yes, it is, my big strong man, said Great Granny Gerdo, giggling gleefully. Gerdo and Harold looked at each other in horror. You know, little lady, said Boxer Boy, somewhere out there is an all-you-can-eat buffet with the senior citizens. Early bird special just going to waste. Well, let's go find it, you big hunko love, said Great Granny Gerdo as she kissed him passionately on his swabby neck fat. The scene that followed could best be described as the drooliest 5-minute kiss in the history of children's book. Dentures sloshed, wrinkles flapped, and rubbery Joe squished, smushed, and quivered gallantiously. Said Harold. I think I need to wash my eyeballs. Me too, said George. And as the Geriatric Avengers flew off into the sunset, George and Harold decided to try very, very hard not to think about the disgusting event they had just witnessed. Come on, we've got to wrap the story up, said George. First we need to dehypnotize them, shrink Sulu. Then we've got to go back into the crazy purple potty and return these bozos to their alternate universe, said Harold. Chapter 29, to make a long story short, zap! Chapter 30, to make a long story even shorter, kick! Chapter 31, the chapter where nothing bad happens. Gee, that worked out pretty good, said Harold. Sulu is now back to his normal size and personality, and the purple potty people are back in their own reality. They won't be able to bother us ever again. I guess everything worked out perfectly. Yeah, nice going, said George, looking a bit annoyed. Why do you have to say things like that? Things like what? Asked Harold. Haven't you been paying attention in these stories? Asked George. Every time somebody says something like that, it always means that a bunch of bad stuff is just about to happen. But what could possibly go wrong now? Asked Harold. Freeze! Shouted the chief of police. You guys are under arrest for robbing Frank's bank. Looks like you're going to jail for the rest of your lives. See what I mean? Said George. You've got to stop saying stuff like that. I guess you're right, said Harold. But at least things can't get any worse. Ah! Shouted George. You did it again. Now I bet when you turn the page, something even worse is going to happen. You've got to learn to keep your mouth shut at the end of these books. Yeah, but what could be worse than going to jail for the rest of our lives? Chapter 32. The thing that could be worse than going to jail for the rest of their lives. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a ball of blue lightning appeared, growing bigger and bigger, till it exploded in a blinding flash. And there, standing where the ball of lightning had been, was a smoking pair of giant robotic pants. This can't be good, said George. A small opening at the front of the Robo-pants began to unzip, and out of that opening peeked a fearsomely familiar face. Hey, it's Professor Poopy Pants, shouted Harold. The cop started to laugh. Stop laughing, shouted the little man peeking out of the giant zipper. My name's no longer Professor Poopy Pants. I changed it to Tippy Tinkle Trousers. The cop laughed even harder. And I've got a special surprise for anybody who thinks my new name is funny, with the furious professor. Immediately, the metallic pants opened back the top, and the giant laser shooter rose from its robotic depths. A brilliant burst of energy zapped the laughing cops, and suddenly they were both transformed into frozen statues. A freezy brain for Thousand would take care of anybody who stands in my way, said Tippy. Now, he said with a wicked smile, it's time for my revenge. Oh no, screamed George. Here we go again, screamed Harold. That was it. That was the ace-sipping novel of Captain Underpants. Now 2/3 of the reading has now finally finished. The 9-sipping novel is now about the Tippy Tinkle trousers. The return. The Tippy Tinkle trousers are unloaded as soon as possible. I realized that this has like over 300 pages, so I might have to divide it into parts 1 and 2. Like, if it was up to 3, but like, if I can do it, I will just fit all of it on one video. So, please consider subscribing, liking the video, and get notified for every video I upload. And so you don't need to miss any of the videos, and I hope I can see you in the next one, the 9th book. See you later.